Rajesh S. Gokhale for sparing his valuable time for the first webinar today on BioE3 policy, that is biotechnology for economy, environment and employment. I welcome directors of Institute of Biotechnology Research and Innovation Council, that is BRIC, MD BioRec, Dr. Jitendra Kumar, startups, innovators, representatives from industries, students, officials from Department of Biotechnology, BioRec, and all the participants who have joined us for today's first webinar on BioE3 policy for fostering high-performance biomanufacturing. As Dr. Vaishali mentioned just now, the Union Cabinet has approved BioE3 policy formulated by Department of Biotechnology for fostering high-performance biomanufacturing in the country this year in August. Subsequently, the BioE3 policy was formally released by the Honorable Minister of State, Independent Charge for Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh Ji. As you are aware, global challenges such as climate change, unsustainable pattern of material consumption, and waste generation require concerted sustainable interventions. As the global economy continues to develop, reaching a balance between economic progression and environmental sustainability is a critical challenge for the world. Biomanufacturing has the potential to provide bio-based solutions to these challenges. The BioE3 policy provides a robust framework for enabling mechanisms for fostering high-performance biomanufacturing in the country. This BioE3 policy will build a resilient biomanufacturing ecosystem in the country to accelerate cutting-edge innovations for developing bio-based products. This policy is aligned with the various initiatives and schemes of the Government of India for promoting green growth. Further, biofoundry and biomanufacturing have been announced as a new scheme in the interim union budget during this financial year 2024-25. Based on the national consultation and interministerial consultations, about 20 sectoral expert committee meetings have been organized across the country to identify gaps and challenges under identified 6 thematic sectors. They are bio-based chemicals and enzymes, smart proteins and functional food, precision biotherapeutics, climate resilient agriculture, carbon capture and its utilization, and futuristic marine and space research. One of the key components of this policy is setting up of bioenablers such as bioartificial intelligence hubs, biofoundries, and biomanufacturing hubs to support research, innovation, and scale-up of bio-based products. These hubs will also nurture development of a skilled cohort of new generation of interdisciplinary researchers in synthetic biology, metabolic engineering, bioprocess engineering, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. I'm happy to share that first DBT BioRec joint call for proposals under biomanufacturing initiatives on Mulankur bioenablers for setting up of biofoundries and biomanufacturing hubs has been issued. India's first biomanufacturing institute, that is National Agri-Food and Biomanufacturing Institute at Mohali, has also been inaugurated and dedicated to the nation by the Honorable Minister, Dr. Jitendra Singh Ji, this year in October. In order to share the details about the thematic sectors and subsectors of this policy, a webinar series on setting up a biofoundry and biomanufacturing hubs in the country will now be conducted on a fortnightly basis jointly by DBT and BioRec. This webinar series will focus on scientific talks and discussions by the officials from DBT and BioRec, and also the eminent scientists and industry people on each of the thematic sectors and subsectors. With this background, I now welcome the eminent speakers of today's webinar, Dr. Rajesh S. Gokhale, Secretary, Department of Biotechnology and DG, Biotechnology Research and Innovation Council, followed by Dr. P.M. Molli, former President, ABLE, Council of Presidents. This webinar will delve into key aspects of BioE3 policy and its anticipated impact on India's bioeconomy. It will provide a valuable platform for academicians, researchers, students, startups, SMEs, and industry representatives to gain insights into the policy and its implications for fostering high-performance biomanufacturing in the country. I hope that you will find this interactive webinar very interesting and informative. Thank you very much for your participation. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, we have the honor of hearing from Dr. Rajesh S. Gokhale, Secretary DBT, who will deliver the keynote address on the BioE3 policy and its strategic importance in fostering high-performance biomanufacturing. Over to you, sir.
Hello and namaskar to everybody. First of all, thank you very much for joining, and I think I'm very happy to have Dr. PM Murli as the first speaker of this webinar series today here. I think he's one of the key person who has driven Indian ecosystem in terms of innovation in biomanufacturing processes, and therefore it is wonderful to start with him actually as the first leader of this pack. Thank you very much again for all of you to join. I think it's, in my opinion, this is a momentous occasion for department to launch a dedicated webinar series on a biomanufacturing and biofoundry initiative to commemorate the launch of the recently approved BioE3 policy, which, as Dr. Alka rightly pointed out, was announced by Honorable Prime Minister. Now, this is such an exciting step in the future of our country perspective. If you really look at what are we trying to do from this, I think really what we want to do is we want to build resilience of future waves of innovations in the country through variety of biomanufacturing aspects, whether it's got to do with agriculture, whether it's got to do with chemical industry sector, whether it's got to do with health sector, or even space sectors and variety of other sectors. And I think if you can bring in new kind of resilience and innovation in the systems, that can completely change the dimensions of how innovative ecosystem is built and how manufacturing processes work. The key to this is to really embrace vision and value, which is very, very critical important for various aspects of management processes. And I will give high-level perspective today, actually, rather than going into details of it, because I think many of you have had a chance to look at the BioE3 policy and you can learn more of it. The other is to practice strategic agility, actually. And I think it's very important as we look into the future of our country's perspective, where we want to reach in Viksit Bharat, what we call 2047, at 100 years, India needs to be Viksit Bharat. How do we really climb that step in such a sharp journey where we can strategically, be agile and constantly adapt to the changing market conditions and ideas that are what are important to look at. The third one is to foster a culture of an end user obsession, actually. When we innovate, we should also think of who are going to be the end users, how they are going to be, can we build solutions that our people are looking forward to actually, or can we only identify solutions where that there will be a potential to become as a centric part of activities. The fourth one that I think is important is an inclusive innovation, actually. I think for our country to succeed, we need to think of models that are very different from what US has done it, or for example, what Taiwan has done it, or for example, even what Singapore has done it, actually. We cannot replicate their model. In fact, this is an opportunity for us to learn from their models and define the model that our country would like to do, which is much more inclusive, where creative problem solving is encouraged in a culture in various sectors, in various different cities, rather than, concentrating in only tier 1 cities where largely the technology and innovation sectors work. And finally, we need to learn to use our own data and digital tools to be able to make sure that that the decision making is more data driven. So how do we really build all these new strategies to build new waves of innovation is what BioE3 perspective is to be, BioE3 policy wants to put together as a thought process and idea. I think if you really look at, it's not very easy to bring disruptive innovations in the market. And if some of you would have read this, actually there's always an S curve to the innovation cycle. Because as you are trying to disrupt an innovation, there is already a matured innovation ahead of you, actually. And you want to replace that from a new one. For example, the best example that I can talk about is, for example, you take a tapes, audio tapes, CD, and then the digital world of a different kind. And you can see all of this transition, many of us would have seen in our own lifestyle. Now, how do you in the market move from the digital tapes to the CDs to the digital world? It's very interesting. You look at all the companies will try to make maximum benefit out of the technology that is available at a given point of time. Till the time it matures and till the time it's economically viable. And same thing is going to be happening through biomanufacturing processes for various new technologies or various already available products that are there. How do we replace those products with the bio products so that it becomes more important both from a strategic point of view, economic value point of view, and also larger perspective of human life, what we look at from a perspective that I'm very, very keen to look at. And I think webinars for these kind of purposes is a very good medium to exchange ideas and thought processes, because all of us can participate in this. In fact, some of you are listening and would like to even give a webinar. We'll be more than happy for you, ask you to participate. You can send us a note actually and we'll note it down, and we can even invite you to be able to give it. I think we should make this as a more of an interactive way of doing activities rather than only embarking journey on a one direction ways. Also, one of the aspects that I would like to give a little bit of details about what Department of Biotechnology has done over the years, why we think that this is a great opportunity for us to embark upon the BioE3 policy and the biomanufacturing initiatives for it. I think over the years, department has nurtured a lot of R&D activities in institutions and universities all across the country. And what this has done is that this has given tremendous amount of capacity and capability in variety of sectors. And I think this has given confidence to people through variety of grants, grant-in-aid projects, center of excellences, even confidence to take up solutions that are for people's, for ideas and solutions that have been published so that they can be taken up to the next level. At the same time, what department did through BIRACs, beginning in 2012 and 2014, approximately about that period of time, is we also enabled the bioincubators, and we also allowed startup companies to be nurtured along with this. So this, what it did is that this enhanced the ecosystem into a way that is actually very unique from a biotech perspective. And if you really look at this is one of the most interesting thought process of how the next step of innovation can come in by manufacturing processes, by bringing in the manufacturing component into many of these processes. So I believe that DBT from several years and decades, in fact, has been preparing for this event such that we embark upon these challenging areas with a lot of confidence, a lot of depth, and a lot of understanding that these can become a very successful adventures. However, there are, there's always a capitalist dilemma, if I talk about that actually. There are, in every aspect of life, I think innovations can be broadly divided into three different kinds. One is a disruptive innovation, which is what biomanufacturing is likely to do. The other one that Indians have done really well is called sustaining innovations, and the third one is called efficiency innovations. And all these three innovations, in fact, have a space to play. They have their own ideas, they have their own value, they bring in their own perspective. In fact, once you do disruptive innovation, you have to do a sustainable innovation such that you can take to the next level of activities. However, as you continue to do sustainable innovation and efficiency innovation, unfortunately, the jobs are lost in all of these activities because you tend to become more and more efficient in the processes, and therefore we need to continue to harness the disruptive innovation component of the biomanufacturing, which will which is very, very important for us to take it forward actually. And I think that's where my suggestions and request to all of you is that become more and more disruptive, become more and more challenging for yourself. Take ideas and thought processes that have not been tested before, because the value for innovation in India is enormously high. And I think the government itself, through BioE3 policy, as the world is facing the pressing challenges of all different kinds, is the true solution for sustainable growth. And so therefore, what you should request for department to do is to harmonize all these activities. And the harmonization is what we intend to do. For example, as I given an example of, for example, innovation ecosystem requires R&D ecosystem, requires the systems of entrepreneurship, requires companies interactions, requires incubators, and the biofoundry is one of the key component of that future perspective as well, where you now take up the next step of scale-ups, next step of activities that requires, the next level of innovative ideas and innovations, where people now start to talk about benefit and value sharing businesses of this actually. So that one can bring in the component of economics into it, and by there one can grow into a kind of new dimensions and new space to look at. I think what BioE3 is going to do is going to spark the bio revolution in the country, which is going to be of unprecedented, in fact, dimensions, I believe. And I totally believe that India can take lead in this perspective. Totally believe. Now, of course, there are believers and naysayers of all of the activities. And in fact, I always like to talk about a paradigm that is taught in management schools actually very much, which is basically called a paradigm of, any technology trigger leads to height of inflated expectations. And everything, automatically is thought through, kind of that this will solve all the problems. Let's run through that. Let's take it to that level. However, then there is this trigger of heightened expectations leads to a huge decline in the slope. And then there is a lot of people who say, oh, come on, this is not going to work. We have kind of done this enough. Haven't we tried enough number of times? And so there is a delusion actually occurs. And it's only then that technology immersion occurs. And this technology immersion then leads to what I call, I think that leads to what you would define as the S curve now actually, where now all the educated people and people who have understood and immersed into it now exactly understands how to take it to the next level and to make sustainable products and sustainable discoveries and sustainable ideas. If you really look at biomanufacturing revolution or a syn bio revolution in the world, in fact, the US and other countries have adopted it about 5-7 years back. Or maybe you can say even a decade back. And I think they are already they've already made mistakes. They've already made some of those, or what I call, they've tested the waters rather than saying mistakes actually. They've tested the waters, they've seen what works. They've tried to identify what are the kind of, challenges that you will face. The chemical engineering principles have been extended to the biochemical principles to be able to do bioprocess industry analysis. So how do we really now bring in the innovation component in all of these such that we can put every pieces together and make these things happen? And I believe the biofoundries that we want to plan about will actually provide this kind of enablement to be able to take these activities, to be able to bring in this level of innovative thought process and ideas into it. I also would like to talk about Biotechnology Research Innovation Council. I think what Department of Biotechnology has done in recent years is actually form a conglomeration of institutions that all the DBT institutions had. And what this has done is that this now allows us to actually put together all our people, scientists. So for example, we've got about 380 scientists across all institutions, more than 1,500 PhD students, about 1,000 postdocs, fellows, and several other technical officers and administrative cadres actually. So all of these together in harmony and by competing, but it's what I call competition, which is very, very useful and healthy, can in fact through collaborative and competitive models can develop tools and technologies and innovation ecosystem which is unprecedented in the country and will allow us to facilitate fast forwarding innovations and even furthering business aspect of the world. So we are also going to actively, open up for entrepreneurship for students to take it up, for faculties to take it up, entrepreneurship ideas and bring it to the level. We also plan to come up with another scheme where what is called entrepreneurship in residence scheme, where postdocs can actually open up and work in the labs to take the, early innovation to the next level of innovation, which then can be funded by VCs. there are a variety of activities that are happening from Department of Biotechnology to really make sure that the BioE3 policy does become the game changer for the country. And I'm sure India will take global leadership in next 5 to 7 years in biomanufacturing in a way that is unprecedented and unheard before. So I really congratulate all of you for coming together in this really very, very important enterprise of carrying India forward. And I thank you all of you for joining, and I hope you will continue to keep your enthusiasm, energy, and keep coming up with novel ideas, novel thought processes, ways to solve problems, and really provide a leadership to this country that has not yet ever been done in any technological perspective, actually. So again, thank you all of you, and look forward to hearing from all of you in the future times as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for providing the inspiring keynote address. It is now my pleasure to invite Dr. P.M. Murli, President of ABLE Council of Presidents, to share his thoughts on the role of the industry in achieving the goals of Biofoundry and Biomanufacturing Initiative. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vaishali and Secretary DBT, Alka-ji, Dr. Jitendra Kumar, and the rest of the team here. I'm very, very pleased to be part of this first webinar that is going on here, and also bring a perspective to this whole thing from a very industry point of view, so that you will all be very happy to share some of my thought process here. So on a very lighter and simple vein, I will have to say, here is a policy. First of all, here is a policy. It's a reality. There is a policy there. And I think we should really congratulate the entire team, because in the background, I have seen the number of hours that all these gentlemen and ladies have put together to bring this policy to us. So I have a feeling that there's been a lot of work that went in. And if you had seen Alka Sharma ji mentioned that over 20 consultative meetings were held over different periods of time. And each of these meetings had several tens of people from the industry, from the academia, and thought leadership of biotechnology and so on. So I have been in a few of them, and I know the amount of work that has gone in to consolidate this. Without doing this beautiful 6 verticals that has come about would have not been possible, because it is these consultative ones that, we have a scattered map of all the biotech that were beautifully captured, compartmentalized, and very nicely done in 6 verticals there. Now, the most important part is, if a policy comes out and then we start discussing it, that would be a disaster. This was probably the first of its kind where all the stakeholders were involved in the making of this policy. And I think wholeheartedly, I have no axe to grind, gentlemen and ladies, I wholeheartedly congratulate the Secretary for doing this, because not only did he do this, I saw some of the layers through which this policy had to go through, sitting on the sidelines, and what lot of an effort is needed to get there. And I think he has gone through each one of these stages very painstakingly. The reason I'm saying this is, like he was mentioning about, there's always a fatigue on policy, there's always a fatigue on, okay man, all right, we know that this was released in August, now we are in November, tell me what next. So that could be the attitude some of us could have. So it is here that I want to move to the next segue. That DBT and BioRack are now thinking beyond projects. So all this while we have been used to the idea of writing projects, right? Projects. So for the first time now, we are thinking in terms of products or whatever that comes out of it. So the entire thinking of what is going to be the future is coming out from this policy in terms of what should we do next. So that is one of the very nice things I saw from the policy. And all of us are so used to the project mode that after we start a project or after we write a project, then we think of 3 most important things. One is the regulatory landscape, and then we find ourselves saying, I didn't think about it. Why did I leave this alone? So if you see in the policy, there has been an accommodation to the regulatory landscape there already, meaning that we are thinking about it much ahead. So when the products come out, you will see that there is also a side-by-side, people are walking side-by-side on the regulatory part, which is very nice to see from the policy. The other thing that we always notice is that the interministerial, it's such a siloed approach. Even the Prime Minister has mentioned many times about the siloed approach in the past. But here is a very conscious effort in a policy to mention the departments, what will they actually contribute, what will we take, because biotechnology has grown into a multidisciplinary, multi-ministerial, multi-modal type of activity. So you need every one of them. And if you see in the policy, they have listed all the 15 departments that are actually there. And that is really wonderful. So this is the second part of the segment. The most important thing that we as researchers and people who are practicing biotechnology have to remember, as I mentioned, from just projects to products, all of us have been quite good at our upstream capabilities. So we know exactly how to go about the upstream capability, how to have a very good patent done, we publish it, we can show a proof of concept, we could even show something at the laboratory level. But unfortunately, life doesn't end there. The real life begins from where the lab ends. So from the lab to the commercial scale is where all the boys, including us and you and me, we will have to grow up to be men. And this policy is what is actually triggering us from graduating to be just boys to men, so that all these products are coming out into the open. Why? There are two very important goals that India has to do. One is that it's got a huge population that it has to cater. So a lot of technological intervention is needed, no brainer for that. 2070, we will be a net carbon neutral country. And at the same time, we are an emerging economy or an emerged economy, and we will be marching towards the first 3 slots there. So obviously there will be guzzling, activities. And we have to be mindful that none of these activities are going to hit our nation badly. And this is exactly the reason why the biomanufacturing strategy is born. So if you see, US is 400 years old, like Rajesh ji mentioned, all other countries have done something. We have got a fantastic learning from there. And that is one of the reasons why now we have a head start. And I will tell you that as the last part of my talk today, is that all these countries which are older to us, who have gone in and become developed nations much ahead of us, have just woken up to the fact on some of the things that they may not have if they have to switch to more environmentally sustainable technologies and products that come out of it. And this is exactly the time our secretary also decided to bring out this policy. So it sort of coincides with even the United States, which is now putting out all its ideas. And if you go and read what they are putting out, it is no different, no inferior to any one of the policies that we have also put in here in place. So this is something that is outstanding, I would say. All the thought leadership that has gone in is wonderful. Now, coming to that last bit that I wanted to say, I'm sure you all have a lot of questions to ask. So just to preempt that, I'm very sure everybody likes to now move into action. The moment that this was going to be announced and they saw there was a webinar there have been quite a lot of WhatsApp. This morning, even on my birthday, on Deepavali, we have not had that many WhatsApp messages. Today was one day when I woke up to quite a lot of messages. And I was wondering why I have so many messages, and realized that it was courtesy Department of Biotechnology. They had said that today there's a webinar. And I can see from my screen, some of you may not be able to see, that whatever is the maximum capacity that could be accommodated for a webinar, the DBT and BIRAC folks have done it. I mean, congratulations to you that there is so much of interest I can see. So one of the things that you people will be doing now is to ask, how do we go to the next stage? What is the next stage? Can we have some, the potential to kinetic energy, as one of my friends was mentioning, when is it going to happen? And so on and so forth. So I will reserve those things there. But in conclusion, what do I want to tell you here? The whole issue was in the past that some of the funding for Series A, Series B, and Series C were of a bit of a difficulty when it comes to raising capital in the markets now. I have done quite a bit of research in the past 3 months, which I'm not going to be talking to you now. This I have done it proactively for Dr. Gokhale, so that I know one day this is going to come up. So I'm just proactively looking at all the scenarios where there is going to be funding opportunities and what should the country be doing. But one good thing is that there is a whole range of funds, a whole range of sustainable funds that is available across the globe. And I can assure you this is not going to be so dark as in the past, because if India is going to take a leadership, there will be an obligation for several countries to say, hey, here is a country which is aspiring to have the unique nature of moving up the economy, and they are also thinking responsibly. So there are a number of funds which have now started taking notice of India, and I'm reasonably certain a few of them will have offices here, and they will be able to do it. And as I speak, you know very well, there are a few of them who have come from Europe to put in their offices here and start their funding process. All of them are looking between 20 million to 50 million funding for growing. And this is not for research, this is not for upstream, but they're looking at products here. So I would like to conclude by saying that this policy is one that has taken into consideration a document which we can now put it across the table to several international agencies, several intergovernmental agencies, to say, here we have documented our vision, we have documented our plan. Please, for heaven's sake, take us seriously and look at ways of working together in a global platform. Now that is very evident. And now this is going to be the first step in terms of what I call as the fast tracking mode. This policy is going to be the enabler for fast tracking a number of laboratory captive laboratory technologies into the open, and you're going to see a lot of those being released for commercialization with the help of serious funding agencies which are looking at environmentally sustainable one. Lastly, I would like to say the regulatory landscape in the world has changed quite dramatically, and everybody, including people, I started my own organization hoping to help a few others with synthetic biology. The number of requests that I am getting today from companies which want to transition from chemistry to biology focus is mind-boggling. I sit at home, I don't do BD anymore, meaning I don't have to go on a plane everywhere to go and solicit projects. That is the level of interest that is coming. So if one company, a small company like mine, could have this much of interest coming in, I'm very certain that the huge number of people who are here are going to see great prosperity in biotech, as well as great prosperity, like the Secretary said, in terms of our own nation building a very responsible bioeconomy on its way. So let me conclude by saying congratulations to all the office bearers and to the Secretary in particular, and Alkaji and all the other BIRAC officers. My good wishes, and as usual, I will say I'm here to help this entire thing grow, and I would like to see this grow so that it becomes an effort that is completely rewarded at the end of the day. Thank you very much for your patient listening, and I leave it back to the organizer here.
Thank you, sir, for the valuable insights. We will now open for the question-answer session. Please type in your questions into the chat box. Our team of moderators from DBT and BIRAC will assist in facilitating the discussion. Let's have the first question, please.
So, ma'am, there is a question from Dr. Anthony. He is asking how BioE3 is going to integrate all government institutions and facilitate scientists to be a part of the innovation and startup ecosystem.
This is the whole of government approach that we are adopting. So there is a scope for interministerial partnership. It's a collaboration. So very recently we have signed an agreement with ISRO and with Dr. Somnath and Dr. Rajesh S. Gokhale, both the secretaries have signed an agreement between DBT and Department of Space in the presence of the Honorable Minister Science and Technology, Dr. Jitendra Singh Ji. We are also working with other ministries and departments. So there is a lot of scope to work together. Many of the ministries are working on the aspects which we have in this and the thematic verticals, bio-based products, and also precision biotherapeutics, climate resilient agriculture, carbon capture utilization. So there are 18 ministries and departments which we have listed with whom we are going to work in future. Thank you.
I think, let me just add to that. I mean, the real purpose of policy is to bring all the people together. Because, this states the intention of what government wants to do and therefore aligns the visions of all the institutions and government departments together to come and work together. And that is why, as Dr. Murli said, we've kind of put together in the document of people, government institutions who have already committed to work together. And they've also identified specific areas as well. I think that's just probably at that, we can even go bigger than that as well, actually. And I think the whole idea is also to set up small MOUs such that, you also make sure that specific thought processes are even further channelized into a futuristic goals. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And the next question is for Secretary, sir. And Dr. Satish Gupta is asking, will the regulatory approvals commensurate with biomanufacturing activities?
So, it is obvious that the innovation has to be deeply connected with the regulatory aspect of as well. And this is more so particularly true in the biotech sector, which is actually the new sector where everything is just emerging, right? And that's where, you need to be innovative in terms of regulatory perspective as well, actually. You cannot just say, this cannot happen, this can happen, because I think if you start to become so stringent in your regulatory paths, then you will never leave any scope for how to be able to manage these aspects. I think that's obviously going to be one of the key perspectives. For example, to take an example of, PLA for introduction of making polylactic acid for plastics, single-use plastic. Now, clearly, we need to define enablers because this industry is very, very large, right? And there's so many people working with it. So we will have to come up with regulatory guidelines that say, suppose you take and you say the cap of the plastic bottles should have this many percentage of PLAs in it, actually. Now, this is also very, very important because you also showcase a pathway in which the commercial interest of companies and other people will also come together. And like this, one can create a lot of interesting thought processes and clearly take one by one step to improve this aspect of, how commercialization as well as innovation can be embedded together.
Thank you, sir. The next question is from Dr. Mihir Mehta for Dr. P.M. Murli. He is asking, how is the biomanufacturing scale defined and what are the target volume or value being targeted in each thematic sectors?
That's a very, very specific question. I don't think we should be spending time on that. But I can just give a very simple framework. See, each sector has, for example, you make a gram that becomes so valuable for a particular sector, whereas you make tons that becomes valuable in a certain sectors. So the more scalability it gets, the more complex the downstream gets. And so that is one of the reasons why this policy is going to be an enabler for that. Because doing it in very small quantities, we have all done it. Every one of us have done it in the past. So it's the scale that matters now. And with the global ascendancy of India, now the scale is going to be the biggest talking point there. So without getting into the smaller aspects, for the larger perspective, it is all about how do we go to scale. So that is the whole story. And each of these 6 thematic sectors will have different ideas. For example, a smart protein will have different scale. compared to, let's say, like what the secretary mentioned about a polylactic acid, or let us say a lactic acid or a butyric acid, or anything that comes from in large quantities. So those will be a sort of a different scale. So that's essentially how we should be looking at each one, horses for courses. Each one will have its challenges on how it's going to be scaled.
Thank you, sir. Sudhir has a few questions from other industry panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Amit. Next, we'll take up a question of Dr. Anthony Schwartz. This is for our secretary, sir. So, sir, he's writing, happy to hear about such proactive and comprehensive initiatives in the biosector. So, what is DBT's approach to biosafety and biosecurity within this particular framework? Also, what specific initiatives are going to be implemented to make sure all of these efforts are done safely and securely for people and the environment?
I think, again, a very important question. Thank you very much for asking this question. I mean, one of the keys ways that you can improve the biosafety and biosecurity of the country is by improving better and better technology, one for detection, diagnosis, and also for, countermeasures. Because I don't think biosecurity can be any other way that you can manage and do it. And therefore, it requires that biomanufacturing processes in all these aspects, as we discuss and talk about, for example, detection of viruses or identifying measures that are critical and important for understanding the transmission of infections from one organism to another organism, or even from a point of view of understanding how the waters that are coming through ballast waters, what you call like actually from shipping actually, that are being crossed across various seas and being put together in different places. So all these becomes very, very complex and challenging issues in future. And I think that's where we really need to innovate and develop our own technological skill sets at a scale which can be implemented for a variety of things. And you are absolutely right that this is going to be very, very important that, biosecurity and biosafety is embedded within this whole initiative.
Thank you so much, sir, for your response. And I think Dr. Schwartz's query is being addressed. And so one more question we'll take up from Dr. Kanupriya for Dr. P.M. Murli. Sir, the question is, the biomanufacturing policy is a great initiative, but is India part of the Global Biofoundry Alliance, and how as a country we can leverage the alliance in our favor?
See, I'm never a great favorite of certain alliances, because there are certain capabilities that are very important, like the secretary mentioned, to India. It is very India-centric, India-specific. So collaborative nature is certainly something that I would appreciate than looking at such type of alliances. Except I can see that there are countries now post-COVID where the supply chain has been seriously disrupted, including ours, where we are looking at possibilities of working with more reliable methodologies, where, in a case of a grave emergency, we don't have any problems in accessing very, very important and valuable intermediates or vaccines or other things to save our people. So I think barring that, these alliances, I would say, are good. But here you're talking about much more than that, right? You're talking in this policy more about all the downstream part. So the upstream part is certainly something that will go on, bringing in new technologies, new ideas, etc. But the downstream part gets a great, I would say, spotlight now. And it's more about how we are able to get all these people to invest in India, manufacture in India, and then take it to the rest of the world. So that's how I think the thinking will be in the next few years. Of course, this is my personal view. If it changes, it changes.
Thank you so much, sir. And next, one more question we'll take up. This is for Alka ma'am. Ma'am, this is from Dr. Tiwari. He has asked that biomanufacturing is a highly regulated sector to ensure safety and efficacy, which includes good manufacturing practice, compliance, and stringent validation requirements. So, in this direction, regulatory scrutiny demands thorough documentation and testing, which can slow down the production and increase costs. So, how is DVT exactly planning to address these challenges?
Yeah, this is very important component of this because the policy which addresses regulatory is one of the important component. So basically, when this each sector has different challenges. So how to connect the dots, how to clear the pipeline. So whenever there is a this kind of regulatory clearances and all, so we are actually planning to address that simultaneously. For example, for in smart proteins, which is one of the subsectors of this biomanufacturing initiative, we tried to bring all the stakeholders together to discuss various issues related to smart proteins, how to bring the products in the market, and what are the challenges which the stakeholders are facing, especially who have developed some products in this area. So we actually invited officers from FSSAI, and also there were many the industry and startup the group that they all discuss the challenges with them, and it is the time that we all need to work together to address the gaps and challenges, especially in the regulatory scenario which we have in the country. As I said, that it depends on the which project, which sector we are addressing. So the efforts from DBT will be to work together with the stakeholders to address the gaps and challenges, and including regulatory challenges. Over.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. One question, this is for Secretary Sir again. This is Dr. Pooja from Gujarat. She's writing how is BioE3 policy will be different from the other policies in terms of private academia, industry mentors, and government a collaborative approach. Will it reach out to students' basic innovation, especially in terms for patents and products?
My first question is, was the policy earlier?
So this is
what do you compare with? What do you compare? That would be nice if the questioner asks, what was the policy she is comparing to? So question is, what was the policy that was existing?
I think this policy, in my opinion, is for developing sustainable, innovative, and responsible global challenges. And that's what our countries aspire to look forward to, and that's where we would like innovators to really build their own capability and capacity to address such challenging problems. It's also, can we actually take leadership in the next industrial revolution that are likely to happen as a global leader, one of the global leaders. We've never have had chance to be the global leader in terms of, maybe you can say IT industry did really well actually. I mean, and therefore we are here what we are today for. But I think there are enormous challenges and opportunity for us to become the global leader in the next tech revolution that what all the world is going to look through. I think from that perspective, this is, you can say this is a kind of a new for our country to take up, initiative that kind.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
There is another question for Secretary Sir by Dr. Jagannath Sonowane. He is asking how the BioE3 policy will help scale up the production for the import substitute products like specialty chemicals.
I think as was mentioned earlier, I think the plan is to really, there's already a call out actually. In fact, it's going to be closing in next 10 to 15 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, is to set up biomanufacturing hubs and biofoundry hubs all across the country. And the plan is to really do it both as a greenfield models or as a brownfield projects as well. We obviously would like to prioritize the brownfield projects which are already, at some stage, so that we provide a very quick access for innovators to be able to scale up their activities. And I think the plan is to do this across various sectors. And you asked for molecules, small molecule scale-ups. Clearly, there are already through National Biopharma Mission, there are also a couple of already steps have been taken. And if you require some help with that, I think please write to BIRAC and they will be able to guide you to even start ASAP. However, in next 3 to 6 months, there will be even better opportunities available in much deeper connect with variety of sources and activities, and we can be, I hope this will be transformative for the country. Only you want to add something to this?
No, I think you are absolutely right. I mean, this is a great question also. I think this is what US is also trying to do. They are also struggling with some of the intermediates and APIs coming in from countries that they are not very comfortable in the supply chain. I think India, under the finance minister who was then the commerce minister, I think there's been already a list that has been put out. And I think a number of companies are now chasing those lists there. It's a very beautiful sector to actually be on top. And I think, like the secretary mentioned, next few years we will be addressing most of them, I guess.
We'll take one final question for Alka ma'am. Anasya Bhadalkar. Ma'am, the question is, will greenfield projects in the space of biomanufacturing be included separately for managing the strict timelines of 2 years?
Yeah. So it is very clearly written that it is the entire timeline for 5 years. It's a 2 years, and based on the performance, it may likely to be extended up to 5 years. So this is something that we really want to start with the project where Secretary said a brownfield project. So if something has been done and there is a lot of scope to scale it up further, so we will try to help them to come forward and use the biofoundry facility which we are planning to set up, and also later on maybe for pre-commercial stage manufacturing is biomanufacturing hubs. So that is clearly written in the ad which we have now placed DBT BIRAC jointly, and today is the last day for this, closing the applications. Over.
Thank you, ma'am. There is a student question from Harish. He is asking, with growing opportunities for student innovation in biotechnology, will BioE3 introduce specific programs to support and educate students in biomanufacturing?
Actually, Secretary Sir, with your permission, I actually wanted to touch upon this, but I was worried about the time. See, I think all the people who are part of the webinar, I think one of the most important parts that has been stressed is on the E3 is the employment. And as you can see, besides entrepreneurship, it's also talking about skilling, getting manpower in, etc. So the biggest set of people who will be recruited, in my personal opinion here, will be the people who are going to be trained on downstream of whatever they are doing currently. We have a lot of upstream capabilities, but a lot of the downstream capabilities in terms of commercialization, you are going to have a new workforce that is going to emerge. Now, this workforce is going to be something that the skill which is currently available is going to be slowly upgraded over the next 2 to 5 years. So you will have a lot of newer people coming in. Now, what's the advantage of that is all these new generation people who come in, they are highly technologically led. So there is going to be a lot of innovation in the downstream processes. Quite a lot of things stalled in the early part. As you know, biology is not linear. So we had this problem of how much can you push a bug, how much can you push something there. Now that linearity is going to be slowly disrupted when we have these new workforce coming in due to this E3, where there's going to be skilling, there's going to be manpower that's going to be looking at downstream. So this is a great time actually. Personally, if you ask me, this is the time I would like to be entering biology, because this is the time where I can innovate and be the leader in something which is already there. Now, some of us can't now go back and discover a DNA and say it's double helix, right? Because it's done and dusted. But the downstream processing part, you still have so much of value that you can bring to be the pioneer in that field. And that is one of the things that this E3 is enabling. This is just my view. If people actually look at it very clearly and holistically, you will understand what I'm saying.
I think I would just add to that. I think what department has also done is already set up, the merger of Mohali two institutions called NABI and SIAP into National Agri-Food Biomanufacturing Institution actually. So we call it the first institution that is, as Dr. Murli rightly said, it's going to be providing us focused activities of skilling in the more downstream activities, of course upstream as well as downstream activities for people who are interested to take it up as a careers for future perspective. At the same time, we're likely to set up other few institutions as well, skilling institutions all across the country, where the opportunities will exist for younger generation people to very quickly take up the challenging roles of, connecting the downstream and upstream parts, because I think that's where the real challenges are actually, how very quickly and innovatively, the classical model of innovation scale up is you set up a demo plant for every single technology that you want to do actually. In the future, you can in fact change this to a more like a computer model or a system that is actually plug and play, so that you can very quickly reassemble these modules such that they can be used for different other purposes as well. And I think that's kind of innovation that we really need to make into bioprocess industry right now, so that the cost of the production and scale ups actually brings down. And I think you would be delighted actually that such kind of institutions and programs will very soon appear from Department of Biotechnology side for all of you to really engage into. I think please be energized and take up these responsible challenges.
Thank you, sir. So due to time constraints, this message is for all the participants who have joined us online via GoTo platform, also through YouTube. We really thank you so much for your time. So there are plenty of questions we are seeing in the chat box. We'll be happy to answer them post event. Feel free to mail us as well. So we'll be happy to take up those. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am, Vaishali ma'am.
So as we come to the close of this insightful webinar, I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all the speakers. Thank you, sirs. Thank you, ma'am. So I would also like to request all the audience to mark their calendars for the upcoming webinars in the series, which will explore various thematic areas of the Biofoundry and Biomanufacturing initiative. The webinars will be held on fortnightly basis, and details will be shared very soon on the DBT and BioRec websites and also through social media handles. Thank you once again for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Hello? 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 जी जी सर आ रहा हूँ